In the heart of Sleepy Forest, there's a school. It's surrounded by huge green playing fields where the kids play everything from hockey to football to catch a star. The last game is, of course, only played on the warmest summer nights. And then there's a giant outdoor chess set and a swimming pool and... Wait, you don't know how to play catch a star? It's when you head outside on a balmy night with your friends and family and weave a net from the thread of silkworms. Then you add a handle made from the branch of a bungo-mungo tree and take it in turns to try and catch falling stars. The trick is to balance out the time spent making the net and chasing the stars. For although a larger net makes it easier to catch the stars, you'll miss out on many chances because you're busy weaving the delicate threads for longer. Experts at catch a star can use a net as small as the palm of their hand, but it takes many decades of playing the game to even come close to being an expert. Anyway, where were we? Ah yes, I was telling you all about Sleepy Forest School. There are 3 separate schools in one, really. One for the oldest children, Sleepy Forest High. One for the slightly younger children, Sleepy Forest Elementary. And finally, there's a kindergarten for the very youngest children of all. The Kookaburra Kindy is run by a big, fuzzy, black and yellow fluff ball of a bee named Mrs. Bloomington. She has the tiniest pair of glasses balanced on her nose and rushes about so fast it seems she can be in all corners of the kindergarten at once. Between classes, when the children are playing outside, Mrs. Bloomington takes a rest in her favourite bright red hibiscus flower. She can climb deep inside the petals and bury herself away to not be disturbed by all the questions. Inside the hibiscus flower, she never hears, "Please, miss," or "Bye, miss," or "Miss, Billy's being silly, make him stop." One of the newest members of the Kookaburra Kindy is a shy little Puggle called Cuddle. The Puggle, which means baby platypus, as of course you knew, is finally old enough to head off to kindergarten for the very first time. Her older brother and sister, Huggle and Snuggle, have only told her good things about the school. Cuddle has seen the school maybe 1,000 times by now. Not that she can remember all of those 1,000 times, because on some occasions she was very tiny indeed. She went with her mother on all the days that Huggle and Snuggle were being dropped off, and she's looked through the gates and seen all the bigger children heading in with their backpacks and colourful lunch boxes, and Cuddle has thought how exciting it all looks. A little bit scary too, but definitely exciting. And here it is, her very first day at the Kookaburra Kindy. Cuddle has a brand new lunchbox to take with her. It's bright red and has a picture of an elephant on the front. And inside, she has a little set of sandwiches, a shiny green apple that she has made extra shiny by rubbing it on her jumper, and a piece of cake wrapped up in paper. She doesn't know it yet, but Cuddle's mother has slipped a special "Have a good day" note into the lunchbox too. That'll be a lovely surprise when it comes to lunchtime. Her mother helps her with a backpack filled with brand new pencils that she's carefully sharpened to the pointiest of points, and an exercise book with her name written in big, bold letters across the front. Cuddle has seen the books that her brother and sister have brought back from school, and she can't wait to see what she will be given to bring home too. The 4 of them walk to school together, heading along the little lane through the trees that takes them past a dozen other cottages. Their neighbours smile and wave, looking up from washing cars and watering plants and picking up newspapers, and wish Cuddle a wonderful first day at the Kookaburra Kindy. Some of them wander over to their garden fences and start talking with each other, remembering their first days many, many moons ago at the very same kindergarten. You'd be surprised how few residents ever leave the neighborhood. Or maybe you wouldn't, if you realized what a perfect little corner of Sleepy Forest it is. All around the world, children walk and cycle and ride in cars or take buses and trains to get to school. And here, in Sleepy Forest, you take the alligator. The alligator has been doing this job for over 40 years now and knows how to ease his way gently along the waters, his back piled high with animals of all sorts who are on their way to the school. Cuddle waits at the alligator stop with the others, finally seeing him come into view with his smart black cap in place. She knows he will stop anyway, but just to be sure, she holds up her little platypus paw to make sure he knows she absolutely must get on board too. The alligator weaves his tail through the water to bring himself to a stop, and everyone waiting clambers on board, looking for spare scales to lean against. The biggest, oldest, and bravest kids sit right at the back, almost halfway along his tail. Cuddle watches as Snuggle and Huggle head further back along the alligator than she dares to go, and instead she sits up near the front with her mother, carefully putting her red elephant lunchbox on her knee so she is sure not to forget it. The alligator looks over at the stop with his huge eyes to check nobody has been left behind, and then sets off slowly along the river, pausing here and there to pick up more passengers. There's a market today, so the stop by the Weeping Willow takes longer than usual, with many creatures climbing off and heading over to the stalls filled with pineapples and mangoes and bright green watermelons holding promises of pinkness inside. Cuddle nudges her mother and points to a pyramid of coconuts and proudly counts all the way to 10. 4 on the bottom row, then 3, then 2, then 1 perched right on top. Her mother gives her a quick hug and a "Well done, dear," smiling to herself as she settles back against the alligator scale, thinking of her clever little Cuddle. Finally, they are there at the school stop. Snuggle gives Cuddle a high five and heads one way, and then Huggle gives Cuddle a quick kiss and heads another way. And then it's Cuddle's turn to walk through the gates of the Kookaburra Kindy for the very first time. Mrs. Bloomington is waiting there to meet her, buzzing gentle reassurances as she guides the shy little Puggle up the path towards the classroom. Cuddle steps into the most colourful, busy and lively room she has ever seen. There are balloons of all colours hanging from the ceiling, and somebody has made giant clouds from cotton wool and hung those up there too. Across one wall is a painting showing the whole of Sleepy Forest School, and above it, of course, swoops a giant rainbow. Cuddle sees kookaburras and koalas and kangaroos and all sorts of animals painted on the picture too. And she searches around until she finds a family of platypus taking a dip in the village pond. On the other wall is a huge map of Sleepy Forest with Cuddle's neighbourhood right there on the edge of it in the most southernmost point. She looks closely and sees that somebody has scrawled a star there and written, "My home," and somebody else has added onto that, "Mine too." There's a huge window on one of the other walls that looks out onto the playing fields, and, for the briefest moment, Cuddle sees Snuggle go rushing past with a hockey stick, the fastest flash on the grass. Cuddle has been longing to try hockey for years and has spent a lot of time practicing with Snuggle's stick, bouncing the ball up and down on the little curved end and running up and down the garden while pushing the ball along in front of the stick. She has also, secretly, been practicing weaving nets for Catch the Star, gathering up the long silkworm threads and hiding them at the back of her jumper drawer. Her nets are full of holes and keep falling apart, but slowly she's getting the hang of the delicate knots. She can't wait until she's old enough to go and play the game for the very first time, but she knows it probably won't be for years yet. The morning disappears in a mass of colouring and counting, and then playing catch with a beanbag where the one who catches it has to say something about themselves. When it comes to Cuddle's turn, she feels more shy than ever, but she manages to squeeze out a quick, "Hello," then an, "I'm Cuddle," and finally, with a huge effort, she adds, "I love to dance," before throwing the beanbag at a kangaroo who's waving his arms around and winking at her. "Kevin," announces the kangaroo, giddy with excitement. "G'day, g'day, g'day. I love dancing too." Cuddle flashes him a quick, shy smile, and at lunchtime she finds Kevin sitting himself down beside her with a smile and a bounce. "Love the lunchbox," he says cheerily, tapping the elephant's trunk. "I think we're meant to be best friends." He holds up his lunchbox, which is grass green and also has an elephant on it. Cuddle giggles and shakes Kevin's hand. Her first friend, she thinks to herself. Her very own. Not her brother's, not her sister's friend. The afternoon goes by almost as quickly as the morning, with Mrs. Bloomington telling them all about the planets in the sky. Cuddle listened to the names and thought they sounded like magic, dreaming of what it would be like to visit Jupiter or Mars or Mercury. Mrs. Bloomington promised they would be able to look at some of the planets through a telescope sometime, and they would see all the details of the moon. She told them about a place called the Sea of Tranquility, and Cuddle imagined riding on the back of the alligator across a sea with such a name as that. She secretly decided to rename the River of Tranquility, and she whispered that to Kevin, who grinned at her and said if they were going to do that, then they should secretly call the alligator Apollo, after the rocket that flew to the moon. Cuddle left school that day with an empty lunchbox and a very full backpack. She had all these new and important things like a ruler and a calculator and a calendar and a diary. And she had a book that she was to read and questions she was to answer. The book was all about the stars in the sky and how they twinkled and sparkled and shone, and how little creatures called shine makers travelled between each and every star and polished them up every single night. Mrs. Bloomington headed to the school gates with her class and greeted all the parents, telling them little tidbits from the day and letting them know there would be a spelling bee at the end of the week, and all their children had the lists to learn tucked safely into their backpacks. Cuddle made sure that her mother met Kevin, and then she introduced him to Huggle and Snuggle when they appeared too. And when she climbed onto the back of the alligator, she carefully chose a spine that had a space next to it where Kevin could sit. But that was still just a couple of spines away from where her mother would be. Kevin hopped off the alligator, off Apollo, a few stops before Cuddle. And as he hopped away, he turned and called out, "Be tranquil, Cuddle." And she smiled to herself at their private joke about the naming of the river. Back at home, Cuddle and her brother and sister disappeared to their rooms to do their homework. It was Cuddle's very first homework, so she was determined to take it very seriously indeed. She took out the list of words that Mrs. Bloomington wanted them to spell and read them again and again. Then she carefully copied them out into her exercise book, a letter at a time, and checking back that each one was absolutely correct. D, she wrote, then a very careful R, followed by an E, then an A, and finally an M. Dream. Dream. D-R-E-A-M. The next word sent her straight back to the classroom and looking up at the ceiling with all of the balloons and giant puffs of cotton wool, as she carefully wrote out the letters of clouds. Clouds. C-L-O-U-D-S. By the time she reached the 10th word on the list, Cuddle was beginning to feel very tired indeed. It was hard to concentrate, and it was a terribly long word she needed to spell. For a while, she wasn't even sure what it was, so she tried saying all the bits of the word in as many ways as she could. You, she read. U, call, calip, like, to. Eventually, she managed to put it all together correctly and realized the word was eucalyptus. If she could learn to spell that, she decided, she could learn to spell anything. And before she had quite learned how to spell it, it was time for dinner. And they were all there, sitting around the table, talking about school and hockey and maps, and how she had a friend called Kevin, who also loved dancing and had a grass-green lunchbox with an elephant on it. And her brother talked about terribly big numbers, and her sister talked about terribly complicated physics. And Cuddle almost told them about the River of Tranquility and the alligator called Apollo, but she kept the secrets for herself and Kevin. She did write them in her diary, though, which came with a special little key and padlock, so she could keep her thoughts just for herself, and she carefully wrote about them in there, and replaced the padlock and turned the key, and pushed the diary to the very bottom of her backpack. And then it was her turn to have a bath, which is one of the things Puggles will never have a problem with doing. And she looked at the endless rainbows in the bubbles and thought of the huge rainbow painted on the wall in the classroom. The shampoo bottle was yellow, and she lined it up next to the black bottle that held her mother's conditioner. And for a moment, she pretended that Mrs. Bloomington was there and asking her to spell her words. Dream, she said aloud. D-R-E-A-M. A wonderful place where you can disappear and make magic every single night. Snuggle had told her that it was important to give a definition of the words to show you understood what you were saying and spelling. Clouds, she said. C-L-O-U-D-S. White balls of fluff that float around in the sky. She thought of the clouds of cockatoos that flew through the sky, turning from pink to white as their wings moved up and down, up and down. And then Cuddle was tucked up in bed, and her mother was reading her a story all about the stars in the sky and the shine makers who travelled between each and every star and polished them until they shone like little pieces of silver and gold, sparkling throughout the night. She snuggled deep under her blankets and listened to the story, wondering if it was possible to catch a shine maker when you played Catch a Star, and deciding that she would ask Kevin to practice making the silkworm thread nets with her for when they were allowed to go and play the game. "How do you spell dreams?" her mother asked softly. "With a D and an R and an E, an A, an M and an S," whispered Cuddle. "And how do you spell moonbeam?" her mother said gently. "An M, then an O, and another O, and an N, a B, an E, an A, and an M," said Cuddle, yawning long and wide. "And finally, little Cuddle, how do you spell eucalyptus?" her mother said, kissing Cuddle on the forehead. "It starts with a U," mumbled Cuddle. "Or maybe an E?" And with that, the little Puggle drifted off to sleep, heading into dreams of rainbows and clouds and sparkling, shining stars. This is Koko Goes Rockpooling by Luke Prendergast. This evening we're going to meet our old koala friend, Koko. But we're not meeting him at his home, the little log cabin where he lives with the rest of his family. No, today we're going to meet Koko at the edge of Sleepy Forest, where the line of trees meets the ocean. Because this afternoon, Koko pulled on his welly boots and his bright blue anorak and slung his backpack over his back and set off for the beach. Can you hear the sound of the waves? The hush and rush of the tide, like the sound of the earth breathing. That means that Koko is here somewhere. There he is, picking his way across the pebbles at the edge of the sea. Let's say hello to Koko. Hello, Koko. Koko walks across the beach, hearing the shingle crunch satisfyingly beneath his bright yellow welly boots. There is a gentle breeze, and on it, you can smell the salt of the sea. And on the fur of his face, he can feel the little droplets of seawater that are carried on the breeze. Koko's come to the beach today to go rockpooling. In amongst the rocks at the edge of the water are small pools that get filled by the seawater. Koko has learnt from his teachers at Sleepy Elementary School that these rock pools become the perfect homes for all kinds of sea creatures, animals and plants alike. And that if you put on your wet weather gear and go and peer into the rock pools, you may discover some quite wonderful things. So this is exactly what Koko has done. Now Koko reaches the rock pools, steps carefully onto the rocks, for they are slippery with seawater and algae, and peers down into the first pool. The water sparkles like crystal, catching the pale light of the early evening sun. Beneath the sparkling, the water is deep and dark. Sometimes it looks blue. Sometimes it looks green. Other times it looks black as ink. Sometimes, as the water shifts, Koko can see silty sand and all kinds of pebbles, white and black and grey and brown. sitting at the bottom of the rock pool. But no other creatures just yet. Koko scrambles cautiously over the rocks until he has reached the second rock pool. He peers down into the shimmering water and sees more pebbles at the bottom, but still no creatures. And so Koko scrambles to yet another rock pool and peers into the water. This time, he sees something. It's a sparkling yellow shape beneath the surface of the water. Before Koko can make out what it is, the friendly face of a pufferfish pokes up through the surface of the water. "Hello," says the pufferfish. "Hello," says Koko, who is not so much startled as glad to see the friendly face of a creature swimming about the rock pool. "Who are you?" The pufferfish tells him his name is Zen, and Koko introduces himself. "Hello, Koko," says Zen the pufferfish, blowing up his body full of air. "Nice to meet you. Now, can I tell you a little secret?" "Ah, yes, please," Koko replies. "I love to hear secrets." "Well, the thing is," says Zen, "I've been watching you for a few minutes, actually. I watched you peer into that pool over there, and then into that pool over there, and then finally into this pool here. Can I ask you, why did you move on from each rock pool so quickly?" "Well," Koko explains, "I moved on because I couldn't find any little creatures in the pools." "Ah," sighs Zen, nodding wisely. "I thought that might be the case. But let me tell you one more thing. The trick with rock pooling is that you have to have some patience, and you have to look very closely. A rock pool that, on a brief inspection, might appear to be empty is actually very often, with a closer look and a dash of curiosity, teeming with all kinds of wonderful and interesting things. Can I show you?" Koko is absolutely delighted at Zen the pufferfish's offer to show him the rock pools. He nods his head happily and says, "Oh, yes, please." Zen the pufferfish gives a couple of swishes of his tail and sails around the side of the pool. Koko follows, and when he reaches where Zen has come to rest, the pufferfish tells him to look deep in the water. Koko looks at the sparkling water, at the rocks at the bottom, and the way the tide pulls at the pool and then releases. "Keep looking," Zen encourages him. "Don't look away. Look harder. Look deeper." Koko tries to do as Zen advises, and then, to his great delight and surprise, he does really begin to see things in the rock pool that he hadn't been able to see before. First, he sees that there are not only beautiful coloured pebbles at the bottom of the pool, but tough, lots of swaying seaweed too. The seaweed is dark and silky. It billows in the water in the same way that the leaves on the trees in Sleepy Forest billow in a gentle wind. "That's it," says Zen. "Look even closer." Koko looks even closer, and then he sees that the seaweed contains many different wondrous colours. Sometimes the seaweed looks green. Other times, it looks almost purple. As it moves back and forth in the water, it sparkles blue and red too. A display so iridescent, it seems that the seaweed may well be an underwater rainbow. "Wow," whispers Koko. "You really can see many things if you look very closely." "That's right," replies Zen, nodding his head. "Do you want to find out what else you can see?" Koko says that he sure does, and then Zen shakes his little tail and slips gracefully through a little gap in the rock and into the next rock pool. Koko himself scrambles back over the wet rocks, thankful that the thick rubber treads on the bottom of his welly boots stop him from slipping down straight into the water. When he reaches the other rock pool, Zen the pufferfish is already there, smiling at him kindly. "Take a look," Zen says. Koko looks down into the gently rippling water. Beneath the surface, like before, he can see many small stones and pebbles, white stones and red stones, black stones and blue stones. Then his eyes alight on something else. "Oh," says Koko. "What's that? I thought it was a pebble, and then I thought it was a shell, but looking again, it looks like something different." Koko points at the strange thing below the surface. It looks like a shell, shiny brown and white in colour, and ribboned with sharp-seeming grooves. "That," says Zen the pufferfish, "is an oyster." "An oyster?" Koko whispers. "What's that? Is it a kind of rock?" Zen gives out a tinkling little laugh. "Oh no," he tells Koko. "An oyster isn't a kind of rock at all. In fact, it's a kind of animal." An animal? Koko can't quite believe his ears. But as he stares at the oyster beneath the surface of the water, he sees its shell opening up. Inside the shell, though Koko doesn't know what it is yet, Koko can see something bright and beautiful and sparkling. A perfect, shiny, white orb. Then he hears a little voice. "Hello, Koko," the voice says. "My name is Oily the Oyster. It's nice to meet you." Koko tells Oily the Oyster that it is nice to meet her too. Then he asks about the shining thing hidden beneath the oyster's shell. "Oh, this?" asks Oily, and she opens her shell to show Koko the pale, glowing orb. "This is my pearl." "A pearl?" Koko says. "Where did you find it?" "Oh," says Oily the Oyster with a small giggle. "I didn't find it. I made it. Let me tell you the story. Oily the oyster told Koko then that oysters make pearls when a tiny grain of sand or a little bit of grit makes its way accidentally through the gap in their shells. This piece of grit or grain of sand is as dull and unremarkable as it sounds. Just a tiny bit of dirt that you wouldn't blink twice at. But quite unexpectedly, this remarkable bit of grit is exactly what an oyster needs to make a pearl. When a grain of sand made its way inside Oily's shell, that's when she began to get to work. Over many, many months, Oily began to wrap the little grain of sand in layer upon layer of a special substance, the same substance that her shell is made of. It's like wrapping a tiny ball in layers and layers of silk, she explains. And then, after a long, long time and much hard work, the little bit of grit is no longer a mere piece of grit. It is a beautiful pearl. That is a wonderful story, Koko tells her. Thank you for telling it to me. And you would not have been able to make a pearl without the piece of grit? He asks. Oh no, Oily tells him. I would not. And that is the truly important thing. We oysters know how even something as dull and unremarkable as a speck of dust can often be the start of something indescribably beautiful. A thought occurs to Koko. Just like the ducks on the Sleepy River, he says, who grow up and turn into beautiful swans. Yes, Oily replies, quite delighted. Exactly like that. Then the pufferfish asks Koko if he's ready to discover more delights in the next rock pool, and Koko says that he definitely is. He thanks Oily the oyster once more for her wise and wonderful story, before following Zen, who slipped through to another rock pool. What can you find in here? Zen asks him. Koko perches on a shelf of the dark rock and peers into the water. The pool, he thinks, seems empty, apart from the normal pebbles at the bottom. The sound of the sea tide fills Koko's ears. It reminds him of the sound his mum's nails make on his back when she's scratching an itch for him. And Koko likes the idea very much that it is the sea's job to scratch the land's back. And then, quite curiously, just as he's having this thought, he notices things in the rock pool that he hadn't noticed before. He sees the shells of some limpets sucking hard on the surface of the rocks. He sees seaweed drifting back and forth like long fronds of hair. He sees bright red anemones waving their frilly red tendrils through the water. Then Koko sees something moving in the water, and he notices that a crab has been hiding in the crevice of a rock. The crab creeps out from his hiding place, clicking his claws in greeting. Hello, says Koko. Why, good evening, says the crab, clicking his claws again. Koko asks the crab why he's hiding. The crab explains that he slips into the nooks and crannies in the rock and hides there, very motionless, waiting for little morsels of food to pass by. Then, as they do, he can reach out and take them in his clicky little claws. Often, he says, that's the best way to do things. Bide your time, have patience, and wait for the perfect opportunities to come to you. Koko nods and says he understands. It's just like waiting at the bottom of the tree for a juicy fruit to fall, rather than trying to climb up and pluck the ones that aren't ready yet. Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Crab, Koko says. You go back to your lurking. And with a click goodbye, the crab slips back into his rock crevice. I have one more friend I want you to meet, Koko, Zen the pufferfish tells him. Koko crawls over the rock to meet him at the other side of the rock pool, where he's delighted to discover a bright orange starfish lying against the rock. The starfish blinks her bright, big eyes at Koko and waves with one of her 5 arms. Hello, friend of Zen, she says. My name is Stella. It's very good to meet you. Koko says that it's very good to meet her too, and he tells her that Zen has been showing him all of the wonderful creatures and discoveries that are to be found in the rock pools. Oh yes, sighs Stella the starfish. The more you look amongst the rock pools, the more you'll find. They truly are a never-ending gift. But would you like to know one of my favourite things about these rock pools? Oh, yes, please, Koko replies. Okay, says Stella. But in order to see it, you have to be just like me. You have to lie down on the rock, on your back. Koko does as Stella says. He turns over and lies with his back on the rock. Then he looks up and he can't believe his eyes. Up above him, the sky stretches out like a dark blue cloth. The sun has set. Evening has come to the sea at the edge of Sleepy Forest, almost without his noticing it. And that dark blue cloth of the sky is dotted with thousands, if not millions, of stars. It is as though someone has taken a needle and embroidered the sky with gold and silver threads. They sparkle and shimmer, a whole galaxy of twinkling stars. This is why you can always find me lying on this rock, Stella tells them. Because from here, you can look up to the sky and fill your eyes up with stars. Maybe that's why they call me a starfish too. Not only because I look like a star with my 5 arms, but because I feel so connected to them too, and love to look up at them when they come out at night. And sometimes, when I lie here a long time and listen very closely, I can hear them singing to me. All those stars. It's like a chorus coming down from the sky. And sometimes I even sing back to them. Would you like to sing to the stars with me? Koko and Zen the pufferfish say they would love to sing to the stars. And so, following Stella's lead, they sing a soothing lullaby up to the sky. And when they're finished, in the silence that comes after their song, Koko swears that he can hear it, a shimmering, far-off, ethereal sound. the sound of the stars singing back. Koko and Stella the starfish and Zen the pufferfish all gaze up at the sky, listening to the sound of the stars' lullaby. Then Koko gives a big yawn. He hasn't realized how tired he is. "Time for bed," he tells Zen and Stella. He thanks Stella for showing him the star song, and he thanks Zen for guiding him around the rock pool so magnificently. "I can't wait to come back," he says, and he means it. Then Koko makes his way back through Sleepy Forest, back to the cabin where his warm bed will be waiting. What an afternoon he has had. There have been so many things that he's discovered at the rock pool. The seaweed billowing beneath the surface, Oily the oyster and her story about how pearls are formed around grains of meager sand, Stella the starfish and her sky full of stars, and, of course, Koko's new pal, Zen the pufferfish. What a day it's been. When Koko gets back to his cabin, he is very tired. He brushes his teeth, puts on his pajamas, and crawls into his delightfully warm bed. Outside, he hears the wind in the trees, the sound of the leaves whispering to each other. He smiles to himself as he falls asleep. And then, at last, he drifts into a deep and peaceful sleep, full of dreams of magical stars singing their celestial lullabies. This is The Teddy Bear's Picnic by Gillian Rogerson. It was a perfect midsummer's day in Sleepy Forest. The flowers were in full bloom, and brightly coloured butterflies flitted from petal to petal, resting now and again to bask in the soothing warmth of the sun. Fluffy bumblebees chased each other through meadows full of orange poppies and towering sunflowers. The air was scented with the peaceful aroma of rose and lavender, with an added hint of wild mint and rosemary. It was the perfect day for slowing down and taking it easy. In the garden of a cosy cottage, a family of teddy bears were doing just that. The younger teddy bears, Alfie and Zara, were lying on their tummies in the soft grass, their chins resting on their paws. They were watching a tiny ladybird expertly climb a long blade of grass. The ladybird reached the top of the blade, opened her ruby-red wings, and soared elegantly towards another stalk of grass. She landed on the top of it, closed her wings, and with a little whoop of joy, she slid down the grass. The ladybird reached the ground, waved at the bears, and ran over to the first blade of grass and started the fun game all over again. The ladybird was having a wonderful time on her climbing adventure, and the teddy bears were having a wonderful time lying in the warm grass and watching her. The teddy bear's parents were also having a relaxing day. Mother Bear was reclining in a deck chair and softly looking at the freshly washed laundry on the washing line. A gentle breeze moved through the sheets and blankets, making them dance merrily. The soothing aroma of linen drifted towards Mother Bear and made her smile. She closed her eyes and listened to the sounds around her. The children giggling, a gentle breeze whispering through the trees, the soft buzz of the bees, and the happy sound of Father Bear whistling as he painted the garden fence. She let out a long, contented sigh. On the other side of the garden, Father Bear had just finished painting the last fence panel. He loved painting and found it a very restful activity. He stood back and looked at the fence to make sure he hadn't missed a spot. His attention went to the apple trees near the fence where the sun-kissed apples dangled like jewels on the branches. Some of them were ripe for picking, and Father Bear knew they would be delicious. Seeing the scrumptious apples gave him an idea. He smiled to himself. This was the perfect day for such an outing. He put the lid on the paint tin and popped his brush into a tub of liquid to clean it. He jogged lightly over to Mother Bear and knelt at her side. He laid his paw over hers. Mother Bear opened her eyes and smiled at her husband. Father Bear said, "Isn't this a beautiful day? Shall we go on a picnic?" Mother Bear's face lit up in delight, and she said, "You must have been reading my mind, because I was thinking the same thing. You tell the children, and I'll get the picnic hamper ready." With a spring in her step, Mother Bear headed into the cottage. Father Bear went over to the children and lay on his tummy next to them. He watched the ladybirds' climbing antics for a moment and said he wished he could climb a blade of grass. His children chuckled. Father Bear said, "It's such a lovely day that your mother and I have decided to have a family picnic." As soon as he said the word picnic, the little teddy bears leapt to their feet and jumped up and down in joy. Zara asked if she could take her book about dancing ponies with her, her dragon colouring-in book, and her trumpet. Father Bear wasn't sure why Zoe needed her trumpet, but he said yes anyway. Alfie asked if he could bring his skipping rope, his toy robot, and his pyjamas with the llamas on them. Father Bear wasn't sure why Alfie needed his pyjamas, but he said yes anyway. The children raced into the cottage and began filling their backpacks with everything they would need for the picnic. Father Bear went into the kitchen and helped Mother Bear with the picnic hamper. Together, they made a pile of honey sandwiches using slices of soft bread. They chopped vegetables into chunks and made delicious dips to go with them. Mother and Father Bear went into the garden and collected plump raspberries and blackberries from the hedgerows. Father Bear remembered the apple trees and picked a dozen ripe apples. Bottles were filled to the brim with cold water, and ice cubes popped inside to keep the water extra cold. Everything went into the picnic hamper. When it was full, Father Bear closed the hamper and gave it a satisfied tap. Zara and Alfie rushed into the kitchen with their backpacks in place and hats on their heads. They asked if it was time to go on the picnic. Father Bear picked up the hamper and said yes, It was time to go. Mother Bear didn't say anything. She was looking at the hamper with a puzzled look on her face. Father Bear asked if something was bothering her. I'm not sure, Mother Bear replied. I've got a feeling that I've forgotten something, but I can't think what. She shook her head and said it couldn't be anything important, and they had packed plenty of food and drink. The teddy bears left their cottage and set off on their picnic. Zara skipped along the forest path with her brother. She looked over her shoulder and asked, Where are we going to have our picnic? In the middle of the meadow or at the side of the river? I want to go to the park. They've got lots of picnic tables there, Alfie said. Or maybe the big field, where there's lots of room to run around. Mother Bear considered their suggestions and said they all sounded good, and she couldn't decide which one to pick. The children couldn't either. She suggested they kept on walking and see how they felt further along the path. The children nodded and continued skipping along. Rays of sunlight slanted through the trees and cast flickering shadows across the path. Warm summer breezes flowed over the bears and gently ruffled their fur. Crickets chirped and bumblebees buzzed. Birds tweeted happily to each other from the treetops. The teddy bears carried on walking. Soon they came to the home of one of their friends, a fluffy white rabbit who was sitting outside her burrow. Her bunnies were playing in the grass nearby. The rabbit waved to the bears and asked where they were going. On a picnic, Father Bear replied. What a great idea, the rabbit said. It's the perfect day for such a lovely outing. I love sitting on a picnic blanket and eating food in the fresh air. There's nothing like it. Mother Bear put her paw on her forehead. A picnic blanket. I've forgotten to bring a blanket. She shrugged. Well, there's nothing we can do about that now. Our cottage is too far away for us to go back for one. I suppose we can sit on the grass instead. The White Rabbit said they must have a picnic blanket and they could borrow hers. It was enormous, and the bears would easily fit on it with room to spare. Mother Bear said that was a very kind offer, and yes, please, they would love to borrow the blanket. She had an idea and shared a look with Father Bear to see if he was thinking the same thing. He was, because he said, Why don't you and your children join us on our picnic? We've got plenty of food. The rabbit beamed in delight. She collected her children and took them into the burrow to collect the picnic blanket and some toys for her children. The rabbit family jumped back out a minute later. The bunnies had little backpacks with them, and their mother had an enormous blanket tucked under her arm. Father Bear took the blanket and placed it on top of the hamper. The little bunnies waved to Zara and Alfie and hopped over to them. The White Rabbit said, I don't know what's in their bags, but I did see some pajamas going in there. Father Bear laughed and said Alfie had packed his pajamas too. The teddy bears continued on walking through the sunlit forest with their rabbit friends at their side. Further along, they came across another friend. This time it was a squirrel who lived in a tree house. When he saw the teddy bears and the rabbits, the squirrel ran down the tree and said hello to them. He asked where they were going. Father Bear told him about their picnic plans. The squirrel grinned and said he loved picnic food, especially the desserts. He rubbed his tummy and said his favorite dessert was pecan pie topped with freshly whipped blueberry cream. Mother Bear put her paw on her forehead and said, "Desserts! I forgot to pack some desserts." The squirrel said he'd made some pecan pies that very morning. He had plenty to spare and asked if they would like some. He had also whipped up some blueberry cream and they could have some of that too. The bears and the rabbits said they would love that. Thank you. The squirrel scampered up the tree and disappeared into his house. Mother Bear shared a look with Father Bear. He nodded and smiled at her. When the kind squirrel returned with a couple of pies and a jug of freshly whipped cream, the bears asked him to join their picnic. Father Bear said, "Bring your twin brother too." The squirrel broke into a huge smile and thanked them. Back up the tree he went and returned this time with his twin brother. His twin brother was carrying a guitar. The teddy bears, rabbits, and squirrels continued on their journey along the path. They felt very peaceful and happy. The sun shone warmly on the traveling animals. The fresh air was scented with pine trees and wild herbs. Along the way, they met other animals who offered them food, drink, and other items perfect for a picnic on a sunny day. A fox gave them chocolate chip cookies, popping candy cookies, and banana bread still warm from the oven. A woodpecker gave them bowls of freshly picked fruit, including scrumptious strawberries and plump plums. He also offered them a jar of pickled gherkins, which caused Father Bear's face to light up. He loved pickled gherkins. A couple of chipmunks offered to lend them a selection of bat and ball games. When the animals couldn't decide which ones to borrow, the chipmunks said they could have them all. And an owl gave the animals some board games and puzzle books. Mother and Father invited all the kind animals to join their picnic, and everyone they asked said yes. More picnic blankets were collected, and some folding chairs too. Onwards the party of picnickers travelled. Someone started to sing some cheerful songs, and everyone joined in. The squirrel's twin brother played his guitar, and Zara blew on her trumpet. As the happy friends walked along, a family of deer stepped out of the trees and asked where everyone was going. When Father Bear said they were going on a picnic, the biggest deer asked where they were going to have the picnic. Father Bear looked at Mother Bear. She said they hadn't decided on a place yet. The deer said, "If I may offer a suggestion, the beach is always a wonderful place to have a picnic. The young ones can play games in the sand or paddle in the ocean, and others can relax in chairs and maybe read a book or do a crossword puzzle." The bears liked the idea of that and asked the other animals what they thought. They all agreed the beach was the ideal location for their picnic. The deer family were invited to join the picnic too. The deer happily accepted the invitation and brought with them beach games and some more food, including delicious ice cream, which was eaten on the last part of the journey. The picnic procession wound through the trees and towards the beach. Soon, the animals heard the soothing sound of the ocean lapping at the shore. They rounded a bend in the path, and the beach came into view. The golden sand stretched out on either side. A few animals were lying on blankets and enjoying the gentle heat of the sun. The sun glinted off the vast blue ocean, and seagulls dipped and soared over the water. The teddy bears led the way onto the beach and found the perfect spot to have their picnic. Blankets were laid out and chairs set up. The delicious food was put on the blankets and cold drinks were poured for everyone. When all the food was ready, the animals sat down and tucked into the delicious feast. One of the bunnies said the food tasted even better when it was eaten outside. Everyone agreed. As the animals ate their food, they gazed at the gentle waves and watched as the water washed gently upon the shore. The peaceful sound of the waves mingled with the soft chatter coming from the animals. Everyone said it was the perfect day for a picnic, and sharing it with friends made it extra special. The youngest animals said they'd had enough to eat and asked if they could dip their toes in the ocean. Father Bear said he would take them. He led the children down to the water's edge and kept a watchful eye on the little ones as they let the warm water trickle over their feet. Some of them decided to play a game with the ocean and jumped out of the way as the water came closer. They giggled in delight every time the wave missed touching their toes. Back at the picnic area, some of the animals decided to set up games on the beach and use the bats and balls that the chipmunks had brought with them. The young animals returned from the water's edge and asked if they could make sandcastles. Buckets and spades were produced, and the little animals became absorbed in their creations. Alfie made a sandcastle and proudly placed his toy robot on the top of it. More games were played on the beach, and everyone joined in. Running around made the animals hungry, and the rest of the picnic food was eaten. With full tummies, the animals rested on the various blankets and chairs and gazed once more at the gentle waves of the ocean washing up on the shore. The sun began to move towards the horizon, and shades of pale orange appeared in the sky. Mother Bear noticed that a couple of the younger children were yawning. She spoke to Father Bear and asked if they should head home soon before the young ones fall asleep. Father Bear said it was such a lovely day, and watching the sunset by the beach would be a wonderful way to end it. With a twinkle in his kind eyes, he added that if any little ones fell asleep, he would carry them home. The sky turned from orange to dusky pink. The sun moved closer towards the horizon and sent the last of its rays dancing across the undulating waves of the ocean. Some of the animals began to play restful songs on the instruments they had brought with them. Mrs. Bear asked her husband to sing one of his lullabies. He had a lovely deep voice, and whenever he sang to Zara and Alfie, they would fall asleep in minutes. Father Bear chuckled and said he'd be happy to sing, but if all the young ones fell asleep, he might need help carrying them home. Mother Bear smiled and said she would help him, and so would the others. Father Bear cleared his throat and began to sing. His wonderfully deep voice carried across the beach, and those that heard it stopped what they were doing and smiled. The picnic animals listened to the peaceful tones coming from Father Bear, and just as he suspected, some of the younger ones began to fall asleep. Father Bear came to the end of his song and received a quiet round of applause. Zara asked if she could read her bedtime story and held up her book about the dancing ponies. Mother Bear said that was a great idea. The children who had brought pajamas quickly changed into them and sat in front of Zara with eager looks on their little faces. Zara began her story, and just like her father, she had a soothing, calm voice, and it wasn't long before tired little eyes began to close. The sun disappeared below the horizon, and swathes of pink and purple filled the sky. One by one, the sparkling stars twinkled into view. Some of the children started to count them, but fell asleep before they reached 10. The moon appeared from behind a cloud and cast moonbeams across the dark blue ocean. Zara finished her story, closed her book, and yawned. Her little brother was fast asleep on the blanket in front of her. She lay next to him and closed her eyes. The older animals gazed fondly at the sleeping animals. They knew they should be heading home soon, but the beautiful sight of the evening sky was too magical to miss. Mother Bear leaned against Father Bear and said it had been a wonderful day. Father Bear agreed and suggested they stay just a little bit longer. When the animals of Sleepy Forest returned to their homes later on and settled down in their cozy beds, they dreamed of the lovely picnic they'd shared with dear friends on a beautiful sunny day in summer. We're drifting towards dreams now, the happiest, loveliest dreams you've ever dreamt. We're calm and cozy. Your breathing is relaxed and you can feel that lovely weight of the blanket keeping you safe and warm. Aren't you comfy? You are so warm and cozy, so sleepy. As you drift into dreams, count all the things you're grateful for. Let yourself fill up with all of the little moments that made you smile today. See the faces of the people that made you laugh. Think of the things that challenged you. Think of the things you learned and the practice that meant you'll be a little bit better tomorrow than you were today. Think about how warm and cozy and sleepy you are here in your bed. What a day you had. Wonderful things lie ahead for you too. You will have wonderful adventures tomorrow and the next day and the one after that. The whole world is waiting for you. But there's no rush. There's nothing more to do today. All that's left for today is rest, deep, cozy sleep. The most beautiful of dreams are waiting for you now. That's why you're drifting off, gently, into dreamland. So keep breathing slowly. Let yourself get toasty warm. Let your eyelids stay heavy. And know that you are safe. Remember that you are smart. You are brave. You are kind. And you are loved. Think it to yourself. I am smart. I am brave. I am kind. I am loved. You are a dream. When tomorrow comes, you'll face it with a smile, because you are smart, brave, kind and loved. Because you are you, uniquely, wonderfully you. What kind of dream are you drifting towards tonight? You can dream however you want, because your imagination is as wide as the universe. What will you find in tonight's dream? Maybe you'll see your favourite characters. Is that Hector and Sunny over there? Maybe you'll visit the moon, where there's mice eating cheese in the craters. Maybe you'll walk through Sleepy Forest, where Koko the koala is strumming his pink ukulele on the banks of Sleepy River. Let your imagination take you away. Your dreams are all yours, and you deserve the sweetest dreams of all, because you are brave, you are kind, and you are loved. You are brave, you are kind, and you are loved, and you are wonderfully, uniquely you. You are a dream, and it's time to sleep, tucked up in your bed. Breathe slowly and melt into your bed. Isn't it warm and soft and cozy? It's time to rest. Take deep breaths in and out and let yourself relax as you say goodbye to the day. Let your body get even heavier. Let your whole body go floppy. Drift deeper into sleep with every breath and say goodnight. Remember, tomorrow will be a good day because you have a big heart. You are a good friend. You believe in yourself. You know there's nothing better to be than yourself. It's okay to get things wrong. It's okay to ask for help. You can do whatever you set your mind to. Be proud to be different. Be proud of your achievements. Be proud of yourself. You are a good learner. You are a good listener. You are a good example to others. You are valued. You are loved. You are sleepy. So drift off now, little one. Let the dreams take over. As you sleep, let your dreams take you to magical lands and faraway places. Remember, there's no room for worries in your dreams, just magic. It's a magic place where anything can happen, anything you want. It's a place of positivity and light. Let positivity soak into you and fill you up. Imagine it as a golden light traveling from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Imagine that wherever the light touches you fills with happiness. Imagine that the light makes you feel calm. You're wrapped in a warm, cozy glow within your soft, toasty blanket. Isn't that nice? You're safe, tucked up tight. So sleep soundly all through the night. Sweet dreams.